Today, we are really strapping in for something I think is genuinely transformative. We're looking at the science of accelerated mastery.
That's right.
Our sources detail this, well, pretty revolutionary deep learning platform. It's built on, what, 32 scientific principles?
32. Yeah. All designed to fundamentally reshape how you learn.
How you learn, not just what you learn.
Exactly. The goal is to shift you from being just a passive consumer of information.
But which most of us are, let's be honest.
Right. Into becoming an active super learner.
A super learner. Okay, I like the sound of that.
And the promise here, it's not just, slightly better memory.
No.
It's pitched as a permanent cognitive upgrade. This system is a powerful synthesis. It fuses three really robust pillars.
Okay, what are they?
First, you got Nobel Prize-winning cognitive science, then proven Finnish pedagogy, the kind that's won PISA awards, focusing heavily on critical thinking application.
Right, the Finnish system is famous for that.
Exactly. And then, layered on top, cutting-edge adaptive AI. That's what ensures a total personalization.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because the core problem this platform is trying to solve.
Well, it's something we all experience, right?
Yeah.
Forgetting things, struggling to apply what we think we know.
Absolutely.
And the sources argue this isn't really the learner's fault. It's not like you failed.
That's the essential insight, yeah. That forgetting, that struggle. It framed as a catastrophic failure of traditional basic learning.
Basic learning, like cramming for an exam.
Exactly. Or passively watching video lectures, maybe reading a textbook once through.
Guilty.
We all are. That method, it's all about just loosely connecting details into short-term memory.
Which feels productive at the time.
It does. But it's fragile. It's often an inert knowledge, and it degrades, well, incredibly quickly.
So you ace the exam.
Right. And then 2 months later, someone asks you about a core concept from that exam.
Blank stare. Pretty much. The knowledge is gone. And that, the platform argues, is a failure of the method. The knowledge was never structurally encoded in the first place.
Structurally encoded. Okay. So if traditional learning gives us this inert knowledge, like you can maybe answer a quiz question, but freeze up when a client asks you something real world.
Yeah, exactly that disconnect.
How does this new architecture actually engineer genuine capability, something resilient? How do we build something stronger than that leaky short-term memory?
Okay, so the process is deliberately structured. It moves the user through two advanced transformative stages.
2 stages. What's the first?
The first stage is called deep learning. This is where the platform actively, almost forcefully, makes you engage in tasks designed to build strong, durable neural connections.
Okay, durable is the key word there.
Absolutely. Connections designed to last for years, not days or weeks. We're talking about maximizing the beneficial friction needed to encode knowledge properly.
Interesting. Not making it easy, but making it stick.
That's the idea. Moving knowledge from the brain's temporary files to the permanent archive, essentially.
Okay, that's stage 1. Durability. What about stage 2?
Stage 2 is true mastery. And this moves you way beyond just recalling facts or even just applying formulas correctly.
Right.
It's about developing genuine expert intuition. Your brain starts to automatically recognize deep, complex patterns. What Herbert Simon, the Nobel laureate, called chunks.
Chunks, like seeing the whole chessboard, not just individual pieces.
Exactly that kind of thing. You start solving complex problems much faster, much more accurately than someone who's still relying on step-by-step sequential analysis.
Right.
That's the real difference between, say, an amateur musician and a master.
Wow. Okay, so it's fundamentally building intuition and pattern recognition. That's a much higher goal than just remembering stuff.
Much higher.
And the ultimate mission for us in this deep dive, then, is to decode these 32 principles
Right.
that create this system. And the ultimate benefit, the sources claim, is this force multiplier, the meta skill of accelerated mastery.
Learning how to learn.
Learning how to learn faster for life, so that theoretically, every next subject you decide to tackle, it should take less time to get really good at it.
That's the core promise, a compounding cognitive advantage.
Okay, so to really understand this whole machine, we need to start at the bottom, the foundation. What's the core philosophy here? What does this system believe expertise actually is? We're looking at group I principles now.
Right. The system starts with a very specific, non-negotiable definition of mastery. And the first cornerstone is deliberate practice and chunking. This combines the foundational work of Herbert Simon and K. Anders Ericsson.
Deliberate practice. I've heard of that. It's not just practicing. It's practicing the hard stuff.
Exactly. It's not just about putting in the hours. It requires goal-directed training. Yeah. Training that ruthlessly targets your current performance bottlenecks, the things holding you back right now.
So, like you said, the difference between playing easy piano pieces for 2 hours versus spending those 2 hours specifically grinding on that one difficult measure that always trips you up.
Precisely. You have to find that exact point where your understanding or skill breaks down. Erickson calls it the challenge point, and focus your effort right there.
How does the platform find that point for you?
Through what it calls high diagnosticity tasks. These aren't just simple tests asking if you know the answer.
No.
They're designed to reveal why you broke down. Was it a conceptual misunderstanding? Was it a failure to transfer the knowledge? Was the memory trace itself just too weak? It pinpoints the reason for the error.
Okay, that sounds rigorous. And maybe a bit painful, confronting your weaknesses so directly.
It can be. But the reward for that targeted, focused effort is crucial.
Which is?
It builds chunking, that concept we mentioned. It's about grouping complex information. Think of a really intricate business strategy or a complex leadership scenario or an advanced formula into one single recognizable pattern.
So the brain processes it as one thing, not 10.
Exactly. Effortlessly. This knowledge compression, this chunking, it's the absolute bedrock of expert intuition and lightning-fast decision-making.
Makes sense. Experts see patterns, not just data points. Okay, principle 1. Deliberate practice builds chunks. What's the second philosophical pillar, meaning as use, drawing from Wittgenstein?
Yes, and this directly tackles that problem of inert knowledge we discussed. Why do we know things we can't actually use?
Right.
Wittgenstein argued, and the sources stress this, that true meaning isn't found in memorizing a definition from a textbook.
No.
No, it's found in the use of a concept within what he called language games, basically the context, the application.
So knowing the definition of fiduciary duty isn't the same as knowing how to act with fiduciary duty in a tricky situation?
Precisely. Or memorizing the components of a SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
If you never actually apply it to a struggling business, that knowledge is just sitting there, useless, inert.
Okay, so how does the platform force this meaning through use?
Every single task, pretty much, is framed as a practical simulation or requires you to make an assertion in context. It forces you to immediately use the knowledge.
Use it how?
You might have to assert a policy based on the principle, or qualify a statement using the nuances you just learned,
Right.
or apply the theory within a very specific conditional context. If X happens, then you should do Y based on this concept.
Ah.
This transforms that abstract theory into actionable, conditional knowledge. It gets stored in your brain almost like an instruction manual, ready to be deployed. It rarely asks, what is this concept? It constantly asks, what do you do with it?
You're right. Moving from what to how, okay, that covers the philosophy. But deliberate practice is tough. It requires effort, focus.
Intense effort, yeah.
So where does the energy come from? We need to talk about group 3. The engine of intrinsic motivation. You can't force someone to struggle effectively if they just don't want to, right?
Absolutely critical. You can't sustain that rigorous, high-friction learning needed for deep encoding without strong internal motivation. This is where the platform brings in gamification and competence motivation, heavily leveraging Decky and Ryan's self-determination theory.
Self-determination theory, that's the one with the 3 core needs.
That's the one. The theory posits that intrinsic motivation, the kind that keeps you going long-term, thrives when 3 basic psychological needs are met: competence, autonomy, and relatedness.
Okay, so how does the system engineer those needs to keep you pushing through the hard parts? Let's start with competence.
Competence is fostered through that inherent satisfaction of tackling optimally challenging tasks. Remember the challenge point. It's hard, but doable. And hitting clear, objective standards like reaching a 90% mastery score on a section provides that sense of progress. Crucially, this is paired with instant, detailed feedback. You feel yourself getting better, measurably.
Okay, so you feel capable. What about autonomy? Feeling in control.
Autonomy comes from giving the user meaningful choices. Maybe you get to choose which specific subtopic within a larger module you want to drill down on first. Or perhaps you can select the type of explanation that works best for your learning style, an analogy, a technical breakdown, a case study. You feel like you're driving the process, not just being passively fed information. You own the path to some extent.
Right. And the third need, relatedness. How do you get relatedness with an AI?
That's interesting, isn't it? Relatedness is fostered through the design of the AI persona itself. It's presented as an authoritative, yet consistently supportive guide. Think of the voice of world-class experts, like the source mentions Marjo or Christian Dillstrom. This consistent, credible persona creates a powerful sense of being personally mentored.
Ah, like having a trusted guide.
Exactly. And that sense of connection, even to an AI designed this way, boosts your motivation to meet the high standard being set. You don't want to let your mentor down, so to speak.
Okay, that covers the internal drive. Now let's look at the learning environment itself. This seems crucial if you're constantly confronting weaknesses. We're looking at two principles from Group 2 now, the environment for honesty and growth.
Fundamental. Absolutely fundamental. And it starts with total privacy and psychological safety, drawing heavily on Amy Edmondson's work.
Psychological safety, meaning it's okay to mess up.
More than okay, it's necessary. Deep learning requires the freedom to be wrong. Frequently, openly, and in ways that provide diagnostic information. If you're worried about looking stupid, we're getting judged.
Your brain focuses on that instead of learning.
Precisely. Your cognitive resources get diverted away from processing the task itself and towards managing stress, managing impressions. Think about a tense meeting where no one wants to flag a potential problem for fear of looking incompetent.
Yeah, the problem doesn't get fixed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the system guarantees that all your interactions, every mistake you make, every weakness the AI identifies, it's all completely confidential.
Just between you and the AI.
Just you and the AI. That removes all the external risk, all the social penalties. It makes you willing to take those necessary intellectual risks to really push your boundaries and confront where you're actually weak.
And that ties into the Dunning-Kruger effect too, right? Where beginners often overestimate their skills.
It directly counteracts it because you can't hide behind vague feelings of competence. Those high diagnosticity tasks give you cold, hard, private data on exactly where you stand. It forces honest self-assessment.
Okay, privacy is key. And related to that environment is the second principle here, authoritative presence and the parasocial relationship.
Right. Learning isn't purely transactional. It's relational, even with AI. Having a consistent high credibility persona, that trusted guide, that world-class expert voice, significantly increases your receptivity to the feedback, especially the critical feedback.
Easier to take criticism from someone you respect.
Much easier. If the instructional voice felt generic or robotic or low credibility, it would be so easy to just dismiss the required effort or ignore the feedback saying you need to work harder on this. By embodying a trusted expert, the system does two things. One, it reduces your monitoring costs. You're not mentally questioning if the instructor knows their stuff, so you can focus on the content. Two, it naturally boosts your motivation to meet the high standards set by this perceived mentor figure. It leverages that parasocial relationship idea.
Okay, so we've got the bedrock, the right philosophy of expertise, the motivational engine is running, and the environment feels safe for honest struggle. Now, how does the information actually get into your brain efficiently and effectively?
Right, now we're into the mechanics of knowledge transfer. How do we optimize that flow? This next set of 6 principles from Group 2 is all about that, preventing overload, ensuring deep encoding, and tuning it all to the individual learner.
Where do we start?
We start with maybe the single most powerful memory enhancer known to cognitive science, deep personalization and the self-relevance effect.
Self-relevance, meaning how much it connects to me personally.
Exactly. There's strong evolutionary backing for this. Our brains are wired to prioritize and remember information that connects directly to our own identity, our goals, our life experiences. Stuff that's relevant to us sticks way better.
So the AI can't just teach generic content. It has to frame it specifically for me.
Precisely. And it's deep personalization, not just, inserting your name into a template. The AI dynamically customizes the content, tailoring the entire scenario, the framework, the examples.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say an executive is learning financial modeling. They won't see abstract examples. They'll get scenarios using SAS metrics, challenges around scaling a tech company, communicating with shareholders, things directly relevant to their world.
Okay.
Whereas a teacher learning classroom management won't get SAS examples. They'll get scenarios tailored to their specific grade level. Maybe dealing with trauma patterns in elementary kids versus managing behavioral issues or peer conflicts in high school.
Got it. So that personal framing acts like cognitive glue.
That's a great way to put it. It strengthens the encoding process and makes the knowledge feel immediately useful and actionable, not just abstract theory.
Okay. Relevance is key. Now, since we're talking about this high-friction, deliberate practice, mistakes are going to happen constantly. The timing of feedback must be critical.
Absolutely critical. Which brings us to instant feedback and the principles of operant conditioning, based on B.F. Skinner's work, essentially.
Operant conditioning, reinforcements, and consequences.
Right. The core idea here is that the shorter the delay between an action and its consequence, the feedback, the stronger the learning. Delayed feedback, waiting days for a paper to be graded, or even hours for review,
It breaks the connection.
severely weakens it. The brain struggles to accurately link the specific action or thought process with the outcome. Psychologists call this the credit assignment problem.
Okay, so the system gives feedback immediately.
Instantly. On every microtask,
Yeah.
every interaction, this creates a very tight, rapid learning loop.
And what's the benefit of that speed?
It's vital for building procedural skills and habits correctly. Instant positive reinforcement locks in the right technique immediately. More importantly, instant corrective feedback flags bad habits or misconceptions before they get proceduralized.
Before they become ingrained mistakes.
Exactly. Before they become automated errors that you then have to painstakingly unlearn later, which is much harder. That low latency correction is absolutely vital for efficient mastery.
Okay. Fast feedback is good. But even with fast feedback, complex topics can still feel overwhelming, right? Especially if it's dense material. How do you avoid just drowning the learner?
That's where hierarchical structure and cognitive load theory comes in. This is based on John Sweller's work.
Cognitive load. The
Mhm.
idea that our working memory is limited.
Severely limited. Sweller calls cognitive overload the silent killer of learning. If you just dump too many new, unconnected facts or procedures into working memory all at once,
The system crashes.
pretty much, it grinds to a halt. The brain just perceives it as noise, as random bits of information, not as structured knowledge.
So how does the platform actively manage this cognitive load?
By enforcing a strict hierarchical structure to the learning, you absolutely must establish the global overview first. Get the big picture, the mental schema. Think of it like building a sturdy bookshelf before you start trying to load it with books.
Right, if you just throw books in a pile.
Chaos. The structure collapses, knowledge gets scattered, and the cognitive load goes through the roof because nothing connects. By building the schema first, the bookshelf, you create organized slots for the details, the books. This actually reduces the intrinsic load when you encounter new but related information later on.
Okay, build the frame, then fill it in. And that structured approach, combined with personalization, helps ensure everyone gets that click of understanding, regardless of how they learn best.
That's the goal of the next principle, multi-lens comprehension and scaffolding. It's about building what's called representational fluency.
Representational fluency.
Yeah, meaning you understand a concept not just in one way, but through multiple different representations. Learners need exposure to complementary views, not just abstract text, but maybe concrete examples, strategic heuristics, visual diagrams, relatable analogies.
Because one explanation doesn't work for everyone.
Exactly. If the platform only offered one way to understand, say, network effects, it would only resonate with a fraction of learners.
So it needs to show the concept from different angles.
Yes. The system explains every core concept through multiple lenses. It might offer a simple analogy suitable for a novice, then a detailed technical breakdown, then a strategic view tailored for a leader, then a visual model.
So if one explanation doesn't quite land,
You can instantly access another one. This ensures that understanding clicks and becomes flexible and durable, not brittle and dependent on just one single way of thinking about it.
this all sounds very thorough, but also potentially time-consuming if you're practicing everything equally. Does it get more efficient?
It has to, which leads directly to the drive for efficiency, embodied in targeted drilling and deliberate practice. Remember, deliberate practice isn't just working hard, it's working smart on the right things.
Focusing on the bottlenecks.
Exactly. If the system's diagnostics are truly effective at pinpointing your specific weaknesses.
It shouldn't waste your time practicing stuff you already know.
Precisely. Maximum efficiency is the goal here. If the diagnostic tasks show you've mastered, say, the concept of supply chain management, but you're struggling with applying it in volatile market conditions.
The practice should focus only on that application part.
100%. The AI concentrates your effort entirely on those specific subcomponents where the diagnostics revealed weaknesses. No wasted reps on mastered skills. This ensures the highest possible return on your invested learning time.
Okay. And the final principle in this section relates to adaptability, especially in complex fields. Unlimited alternative explanations and cognitive flexibility theory.
Yes, drawing from Spiro and colleagues. This is particularly crucial for what are called ill-structured domains.
Ill-structured, like leadership, strategy, things without one right answer.
Exactly. Fields like leadership, negotiation, strategic planning, creative problem solving. In these areas, rigidly sticking to one single mental model or framework is actually dangerous. The context is always shifting.
So you need to be able to think flexibly.
You need cognitive flexibility. And the theory suggests that providing multiple, often contrasting explanations, really crisscrossing the conceptual landscape, helps prevent you from prematurely committing to a single, rigid way of thinking. If you only see one model of leadership, your approach will likely fail the moment the situation changes.
So the platform allows users to just ask for another explanation, another analogy.
Instantly. If one frame doesn't click, or if you just want to see the idea from a different angle, you can request alternatives. This forces you to constantly integrate and restructure your knowledge from diverse viewpoints to meet shifting task demands.
Which builds that flexibility muscle.
That's the idea. It's the hallmark of an expert who can navigate complex, dynamic environments successfully.
All right, we've laid the foundation: philosophy, motivations, safety, and we've optimized the way information flows in. Now we get to the real engine room, right? The cognitive gym.
Exactly. This is where the rubber meets the road. We're talking about the 100 or so unique deep learning tasks that the system generates for every single concept. This isn't about passively reading. It's about actively doing things that force deep encoding based on solid science. This is the heavy lifting.
20 principles in this group alone. This is the core workout.
It really is. These tasks are designed cognitive maneuvers. Their purpose is to create maximum beneficial friction and demand maximum engagement from the learner. They are definitely not your standard multiple choice quizzes, hashtag and day, memory and conceptual locking, retrieval generation, and coding.
Okay, let's break this down. First block seems focused on locking in memory and concepts, starting with a big one: retrieval practice, also known as the testing effect. People like Roediger and Karpik really hammered this home.
Non-negotiable science. This is one of the most robust findings in cognitive psychology. The act of actively recalling information from memory strengthens that memory trace far, far more than passively rereading or re-listening to it.
So the struggle to remember is the learning.
That's a perfect way to put it. The retrieval effort itself is the learning event. It makes the memory more durable and more accessible later. And the platform leans into this heavily with tasks like the blind recall challenge.
Blind recall challenge.
Hey.
Sounds intense. What's involved?
It is intense. You're literally faced with a blank screen. Your task is to type out everything you can possibly remember about a specific concept: definitions, nuances, applications, examples, caveats, everything.
Wow, okay.
And then, the moment you finish, you get an instant graded assessment comparing your output to the ideal model, showing you exactly what you missed or got wrong.
That sounds demanding.
It is. That physical, effortful struggle of pulling information out of your head without any external cues, that is what really locks the memory in place. It powerfully counteracts that dangerous illusion of fluency.
Where you feel like you know something just because it looks familiar when you reread it.
Exactly. Blind recall shatters that illusion. You know it when you can produce it cold.
Okay. Effortful struggle is key. Then we have the generation effect. What's that about?
Closely related. The core idea from Slameka and Graf is that information you actively generate yourself is vastly more memorable and durable than information you just passively consume. Your brain fundamentally values what it creates more than what it simply receives.
So the platform forces you to create, not just recognize or repeat.
Constantly. For example, there is a task called the 3 headlines. You have to take a complex topic you just learned and summarize its absolute core essence in 3 distinct, catchy headlines, maybe each aimed at a different audience.
So you have to synthesize and reframe it.
Precisely. Or another one, generate the core question. You read a text explaining a concept or solution, and your task is to reverse engineer the single fundamental question or problem that this text is actually the answer to.
That forces you to get to the absolute heart of it. Okay. Now, how do we make these generated memories even stickier? Dual coding theory comes next.
Right, Alan Pivio's work. This is about encoding knowledge in 2 complementary channels simultaneously. The verbal channel, words, language, and the nonverbal channel, visual imagery, spatial representations.
Like saving the file in 2 different formats.
Kind of, yeah. It creates redundancy and makes retrieval exponentially more likely. If one pathway is blocked, the other might still work. The system uses tasks that deliberately force this active translation between words and images.
How? Like using metaphors.
Exactly. The success metaphor task might ask you to explain a complex business strategy using a concrete physical metaphor. Maybe it's like building a suspension bridge or following a recipe. You have to map the abstract concept onto a tangible image. Or another task, the growth chart visualization. You might learn about a trend or a process, and then you have to describe precisely what the x-axis, y-axis, and the shape of the curve on a graph representing that process would look like. You're forced to create a mental image and then describe it verbally.
Translating abstract to concrete imagery. Got it.
Hmm.
This sounds like it leads naturally into levels of processing, theory, and elaboration.
It does. Craik and Lockhart showed that how deeply you process information determines how well you remember it. Shallow processing, like noticing the font size, leads to poor memory. Deep semantic processing, thinking about the meaning, connecting it to other knowledge, considering its implications, leads to strong memory.
So the tasks have to force that deep, meaning-based analysis.
They absolutely do. One task is called the so what chain. You take a key benefit or feature of the concept, and the AI repeatedly prompts you. So what? What's the benefit of that? You have to keep drilling down layer by layer until you reach the ultimate root benefit or consequence, forcing deep elaboration.
Like peeling an onion to get to the core.
Exactly. Or another task, the concept comparison. It forces you to articulate the subtle but critical distinctions between two closely related but different concepts. Like, what is the real difference between efficiency and effectiveness, or leadership versus management?
If you can't explain the difference clearly.
You haven't processed either concept deeply enough. They're still fuzzy in your mind. This reinforces the final principle in this memory block, the self-explanation effect.
Championed by researchers like Michelin Shi, this is about forcing yourself to explain how and why things work.
Precisely. It's about articulating the underlying mechanisms. When you force yourself to explain how A leads to B, or why a particular approach works, you inevitably uncover gaps or inconsistencies in your own internal mental model, things you thought you understood but actually didn't.
Makes the invisible gaps visible.
Beautifully put. Tasks like the causal chain explanation make you trace the precise step-by-step causal links. Action A leads to intermediate outcome B, which creates condition C. If you stumble trying to articulate the link between A and B, boom, you found a weak spot in your understanding.
Okay.
Or another great one, the CEO versus new hire explanation. You have to take the same core idea and explain it first to a CEO, focusing on strategic impact, ROI, and then immediately explain it to a brand new hire, focusing on basic mechanics, immediate tasks.
If you can't tailor it effectively.
Your own understanding of the idea is likely too rigid, too one-dimensional. You haven't truly mastered its different facets. Hashtag B. Contextual application and systems thinking.
Okay, so we've worked hard on encoding the knowledge deeply into memory. Now we need to get it out of the theoretical vacuum and into the real world, right? This next block is contextual application and systems thinking.
Exactly. Knowledge isn't much good if it just stays in your head. It needs to be applied in context. We start with experiential learning, heavily influenced by Kolb's learning cycle.
Kolb's cycle. That's the loop. Experience, reflect, conceptualize, experiment.
That's the one. Deep learning isn't passive. It's this active, iterative cycle. The tasks here try to embody that cycle in miniature. For example, the mini simulation.
What does that look like?
You might simulate a brief professional scenario, say, handling a specific type of client objection using a technique you just learned, concrete experience. Then the AI prompts you to reflect on what happened, what worked, what didn't, reflective observation. Then you might form a tentative rule or principle based on that reflection, abstract conceptualization. And finally, you might be asked how you'd apply that refined rule in a slightly different scenario next time, active experimentation.
So you're constantly cycling through doing, thinking, and planning.
Exactly, which connects directly to the next principle, situated cognition. This argues that knowledge is fundamentally inseparable from the context in which it's used.
Meaning if you learn something in a classroom, it's hard to use it in a messy real-world situation.
Often, yes. The context cues are different. The skills need to be learned and practiced in ways that feel like the real situations where you'll need them. Authenticity matters. So the platform uses tasks like the toolkit.
The toolkit?
Yeah, it treats the concept you just learned not as abstract knowledge, but as a practical professional tool. Your task is to identify the specific job this tool is best suited for. For instance, this framework is excellent for diagnosing team conflict, but it's the wrong tool for setting quarterly financial targets. You have to define its specific situational use.
Okay, connecting the tool to the job.
Or a role-play scenario where you might have to generate the very first sentence you would say to open a tricky negotiation, explicitly using the principle you just learned. It forces you into that specific high-stakes application moment.
We also seem to leverage a natural human tendency here with the protege effect, the idea that teaching helps you learn.
Absolutely. Preparing to teach something to someone else is a powerful learning strategy. It forces you to organize your thoughts, simplify complexities down to their core, identify potential points of confusion, and really solidify your own understanding.
So the platform makes you pretend to teach.
Kind of, yeah. Tasks like the mentoring plan ask you to create a simple three-step plan to explain the core concept and its application to a hypothetical junior colleague, or the new hire FAQ, where you have to anticipate the likely questions or misconceptions a beginner would have about this topic, and then write clear, concise answers.
That makes sense for simplification, but wait. If I'm constantly practicing how to explain things to a junior colleague, doesn't that risk reinforcing my understanding only at that basic level? How does it ensure I still maintain a complex, expert grasp?
That's a really important question. The key is the balance with other tasks. The Protege Effect tasks are specifically designed to force simplification, articulation, and perspective taking for a beginner audience. That's their function.
Yeah.
But the AI doesn't only give you those tasks. Immediately after creating a mentoring plan, you might get hit with, say, the criteria setter task, which demands a sophisticated high-level evaluative judgment only possible from an expert viewpoint, or a complex FAR transfer challenge.
Ah, so the different task types balance each other out. Simplification here, complexity there.
Exactly. The protege effect helps clarify the core, but other tasks ensure you're constantly pushed towards nuance, complexity, and high-level application. Simplification doesn't lead to permanent over-reduction because the overall workout is varied and demanding at all levels.
Excellent point. Okay, next up, schema theory and meaningful learning. This sounds like it's about how new information connects to what you already know.
Precisely. Meaningful learning, according to theorists like R.C. Anderson, isn't about memorizing isolated facts. It's about integrating new information into your existing mental frameworks, your schemata. If new information doesn't connect to anything you already understand, it's much harder to learn and remember.
So the tasks have to actively build those connections.
They force the integration. The schema map task might ask you to identify 3 concepts you already master that are somehow related to the new concept you just learned. Then, you have to explicitly explain the nature of that relationship. This new concept is a specific type of X, or it contradicts Y, or it builds upon Z.
Okay, mapping the new onto the known.
Or the correcting schema task. It might present a common misconception people have about this topic, and your job is to explain exactly why that misconception is wrong, based on the accurate understanding you've just acquired. You're actively remodeling your existing mental architecture based on the new, correct information.
Got it. And all this effort connecting, applying, explaining builds towards the big goal in this section, building robust mental models.
Yes, this is a major goal, drawing on P. Johnson Laird's work. A robust mental model isn't just knowing facts, it's having a dynamic internal simulation or map of how a system works.
A simulation in your head.
Essentially,
Wow.
it allows you to predict how the system will behave under different conditions, diagnose problems when it breaks down, evaluate what-if scenarios, counterfactuals, and figure out how to intervene effectively.
How do the tasks build that?
Through systems thinking prompts, the virtuous cycle task might ask you to identify a positive feedback loop that this concept or strategy creates within a system, like a business or a team. Then, you have to suggest specific, concrete ways to accelerate that positive loop, or conversely, how to identify and break a related vicious cycle.
Thinking in loops and feedback.
Exactly. Or the input-output model. You analyze the concept as if it were a machine. What are the necessary inputs for it to work? What's the core processing mechanism? And what are the specific measurable outputs it's designed to produce? It forces you to see it as a functioning part of a larger system. #C. High-level agility, foresight, and judgment.
Okay, we're reaching the summit now. The final block of cognitive workout principles focuses on high-level agility, foresight, and judgment. This sounds like the stuff that really distinguishes true experts.
It is. This is where we move into the most sophisticated cognitive skills. We start with transfer of learning. This is the holy grail, really being able to take knowledge learned in one specific context and apply it effectively in new, different, unfamiliar situations.
Which is notoriously hard for humans to do.
Incredibly hard. We tend to get stuck on the surface features. The key is to focus on the deep underlying principles rather than the superficial details of the original learning situation. Recognizing that the principle of, say, diversification in finance also applies to managing career risk, or even to planning a resilient garden.
So how do you possibly train that kind of abstract leap?
By forcing it. The FAR transfer challenge is a great example. It might ask you to take a core concept you learned from a business text, maybe about competitive strategy, and explain how that same underlying principle applies in a completely unrelated domain, like professional sports or classical music or even personal relationships.
Wow, that forces you to strip away all the business jargon and find the absolute core idea.
Precisely. Another task is the positive inversion. You take the main principle you learned, which might be designed to achieve goal A, and you have to figure out how to invert or adapt that principle to solve a related but different problem, goal B. For example, using customer acquisition techniques and inverting them to improve customer retention.
Clever. Okay, we already touched on cognitive flexibility theory, but here's where the tasks really operationalize it, forcing that restructuring of knowledge on the fly.
Right. The tasks here compel you to adapt your understanding based on rapidly shifting demands or contexts. The remix challenge is a fun one. It asks you to take the main idea you just learned and combine it with a completely different classic concept, maybe combining a new leadership model with the old SWOT analysis framework to create a novel hybrid tool or approach.
Forcing creative synthesis.
Exactly. Or that role-play challenge we mentioned earlier, but maybe even more demanding.
Yeah.
Summarize the core idea and its implications in 3 completely different registers for 3 very different audiences simultaneously. Maybe a highly skeptical CFO, an enthusiastic junior team member, and a confused customer. You have to mentally shift gears instantly.
Builds mental agility. Next, developing sophisticated judgment. Evaluative judgment.
This is about moving beyond just following instructions or applying rules. It's about internalizing the standards of excellence for a particular domain, developing the capacity to accurately appraise the quality of work, your own or others, against meaningful criteria.
Becoming a good judge of quality. How do tasks train that?
The criteria setter task is key. You learn about a concept or desired outcome, and then you have to create, say, 3 objective, measurable criteria that would be used to judge a competition or evaluate a project based entirely on the successful application of that idea. You're defining what good looks like. Or the good versus great test. The AI might present 2 examples of the concept being applied. One that's technically correct, but basic, good, and another that's nuanced, context-aware, and highly effective. Great. Your task is to precisely articulate the specific differences that make the second one superior. You're learning to recognize and articulate excellence.
Sharpening your critical eye. And for innovation, we need the ability to see connections others miss. Analogical reasoning and structure mapping.
Yes, based on Dedra Gentner's work. This is arguably the cornerstone of creative breakthroughs and innovation, spotting deep structural similarities between seemingly unrelated concepts or domains.
Finding the hidden connections.
Right. The cross-domain analogy task pushes this hard. It might ask you to explain a complex financial concept using a detailed analogy drawn from, say, biology or physics, emphasizing the shared underlying structure, not just superficial resemblance. Or a simpler version, the analogy builder. It gives you a sentence stem like, the core mechanism of this strategy is like a common object. For example, lever, filter, network, because. And you have to complete the analogy explaining the structural mapping.
Training the brain to look for those parallels. Now, for looking ahead, perspective thinking and episodic future thought.
This is about the crucial skill of mentally simulating specific, plausible future scenarios. It helps you anticipate challenges, identify opportunities, and set much better, more realistic goals, based on work by Schachter and others.
How do you practice simulating the future?
The tasks guide you. The future simulation might ask you to predict the single most significant positive change and the single most significant negative risk you anticipate in your work or project 1 year from now, specifically as a result of applying the concept you just learned. You have to project forward concretely.
And you mentioned the pre-mortem technique earlier.
The most powerful version, arguably, the pre-mortem challenge. You are forced to imagine that your project, applying this new idea, has already failed 6 months down the line. Total disaster. Your task is then to write the detailed post-mortem, explaining exactly why it failed, what went wrong, what assumptions were flawed.
By imagining failure, you prevent it.
That's the idea. It surfaces hidden risks and allows you to proactively address them before they actually happen. Incredibly powerful strategic tool.
Okay, nearing the end of the workout. Divergent thinking. This is about creativity, right?
Yeah.
Generating lots of ideas.
Yes, based on J.P. Gilsard's work. It's about training the ability to generate multiple unique ideas or solutions to a problem, rather than converging on the single correct answer, which is convergent thinking, fostering creativity and ideation.
How do tasks encourage that?
The question burst is one. You're given the core concept, and you have 60 seconds to generate as many different, unique, non-obvious questions about that concept as possible. Just sheer volume and variety of questions.
Gets the ideas flowing.
Or the alternative uses test, adapted from creativity research. You learn about the concept, perhaps framed as a professional tool, and then you have to list 3 highly unconventional, non-obvious alternative uses for that tool or principle outside its standard application, pushing the boundaries.
And because stories are so powerful for humans, narrative thinking and the power of story.
Jerome Bruner really highlighted this. We remember and are persuaded by information much more effectively when it's embedded in a narrative structure with characters, conflict resolution, agency. Stories make abstract concepts concrete and memorable.
So the tasks make you tell stories.
They do. The before and after story is classic. You describe a person or a business struggling without applying the concept, painting a picture of the pain points. Then, you describe how everything changed for the better after they successfully implemented the idea, focusing on the transformation and the human impact.
Makes it relatable.
Or the dialogue challenge. You might have to write a short, realistic dialogue between a mentor and a mentee, where the core concept you learned is the key insight that helps the mentee overcome a specific challenge or crisis. You're embedding the lesson in a relatable interaction.
We also need to acknowledge that decisions aren't purely rational. Emotion and cognition.
Crucial insight, particularly from Antonio Damasio. Smart thinking and effective decision-making actually integrate emotional data. They don't ignore it. So the training has to address the emotional dimension of applying knowledge, especially when it involves other people.
How do you train for emotional intelligence in applying ideas?
By forcing you to anticipate and consider emotional responses. The emotional audit task might ask you, what is the primary emotion, positive or negative, that implementing this idea is likely to trigger in your team or your clients? And then critically, what does that anticipated emotion suggest about the best way to introduce or frame this change?
Thinking about the impact on others.
Exactly. Or the empathy map. You might have to predict the specific hopes, fears, thoughts, and feelings a particular stakeholder group, like frontline employees, might have when faced with a new policy based on the concept you learned. It forces you to step into their emotional shoes.
And finally, wrapping up the workout principles. Metacognition and that recurring theme of self-relevance.
Right. Metacognition, J.H. Flavel's term, is essentially thinking about your own thinking. It's about monitoring your understanding, evaluating your learning process, recognizing when you're confused, and regulating your own learning strategies. It's the foundation of becoming a self-directed, independent learner.
How do tasks promote metacognition?
The confidence judgment is a simple but powerful one. After tackling a concept, you're asked to rate your confidence, say 110, in your ability to apply it effectively in a real-world situation. But then you have to justify that rating with specific evidence from your performance on earlier tasks. I rated myself a 7 because I succeeded on the application tasks, but struggled with the FAR transfer challenge.
Makes you reflect on your actual competence level.
Precisely. Or the illusion of fluency check. You might be asked to identify one aspect of the topic that seems simple on the surface, but turned out to be surprisingly complex or nuanced underneath. This forces you to acknowledge those hidden depths and your own evolving understanding.
And self-relevance just keeps weaving through.
It's operationalized constantly, reinforcing that initial principle from Group 2. It's not a standalone task. It's embedded within many of the other 100 task types. You're consistently prompted by tasks like the current challenge. Explain specifically how the idea in this text applies to a current challenge or opportunity you are personally facing right now in your work or life.
Making it immediately relevant.
Or the identity statement. You might be asked to complete a sentence like, a person who truly masters this concept is the kind of person who... This connects the learning directly to the user's desired future self, their professional identity, maximizing motivation and memory encoding. It ensures the learning feels personally meaningful throughout the entire process.
Okay, wow. That was a comprehensive tour through 32 interlocking scientific principles. We've gone from the core philosophy of what expertise even is, through motivation, safety, optimal information transfer, and that intense 20-principle cognitive workout.
It's a lot, yeah. It's a deeply integrated system.
But the sources claim the biggest payoff, the most profound benefit, is actually still to come. It's about mastering the process of learning itself.
This is the ultimate goal, the meta skill. Proceduralization and automation of the learning process. It's the moment when doing these effective learning strategies shifts from being conscious, effortful work to becoming subconscious, automatic capability.
Okay, unpack that. Proceduralization, like learning to ride a bike. You think hard at first, then it becomes automatic.
Exactly like that. Think back to our cognitive gym analogy. Those 100 deep learning tasks. Yeah. The retrieval practice, the analogical reasoning, the self-explanation, the pre-mortem, they're like specialized pieces of gym equipment. When you tackle your first subject using this platform, let's say you're mastering startup valuation, you're essentially learning the perfect form for using each piece of that cognitive equipment. You're consciously thinking, okay, now I need to actively retrieve, now I should try to generate an analogy, now I must do a self-explanation.
It requires deliberate, conscious effort to apply the learning techniques themselves.
Right. Psychologists call this using declarative strategies. You have to consciously declare or decide which strategy to use when. It's effective, but it takes mental bandwidth.
But then what happens when you start your second subject? Say, you move on to leading multicultural school communities.
This is where the magic is supposed to happen. Because you've practiced those high-yield learning strategies so intensely and repeatedly on the first subject, they start to become automated. They shift from being effortful, declarative strategies to becoming automatic, context-sensitive procedural policies running efficiently in the background of your mind. You stop thinking about doing retrieval practice. You just do it when the situation calls for it. You stop deciding to self-explain. Your brain automatically starts probing for mechanisms when you encounter something new.
So the process of learning becomes subconscious, freeing up your conscious attention.
Exactly. You can then apply virtually 100% of your conscious cognitive energy directly to understanding the new content, the specific challenges, nuances, and complexities of leading multicultural schools, because the underlying machinery of how to learn deeply is already running smoothly and efficiently in the background.
Yeah.
You're not wasting mental energy figuring out how to learn. You're just learning.
That sounds like a superpower.
It's framed as the ultimate compounding advantage. Your time to criterion.
The time it takes to get really good at something new.
Right. That time should demonstrably decrease with every subsequent subject you master using this system. Because you're not just learning content, you're structurally upgrading your entire cognitive system for learning. It's designed as a permanent upgrade, making you a true super learner for life.
And because this whole elaborate system is built on what are claimed to be universal scientific principles of how humans learn best.
Right. Principles that apply regardless of the subject matter.
It means the platform itself should be incredibly versatile, applicable across very different fields and needs.
Its potential versatility is enormous, according to the sources. They give examples across diverse, high-value markets. For instance, school leaders. The platform is used for really critical, nuanced topics, like advancing equity in schools, managing crises effectively, or tackling the specific challenges of leading high-need schools. These aren't simple checklist topics.
No, definitely not.
Or for teachers. Again, tackling really tough professional development areas, coping with difficult colleagues, effectively teaching students who've experienced trauma, developing truly culturally responsive classroom practices. These are deeply complex, ill-structured domains that demand maximum cognitive agility, which the platform aims to build.
And shifting gears completely into the corporate world for startups.
Yeah, fascinating examples there. Subjects like decoding venture capitalists, which requires huge amounts of perspective-taking, foresight, and analogical reasoning.
Yeah.
Or exit strategies, or advanced sales mastery, teaching very specific protocols for selling high-stakes deals to complex entities like governments or even billionaires.
Wow.
And finally, for business professionals more broadly, targeting skills that traditional MBA programs or corporate training often barely touch upon. Things like true office politics mastery, understanding the real dynamics, not the platitudes, or micro-expressions mastery for better reading people. Even audacious goals like the sure way to become CEO, presumably by mastering the underlying cognitive and strategic skills.
So the argument is, the underlying science, the 32 principles, and the 100 task types is domain agnostic.
That's the claim. It simply engineers deep understanding, long-term durability, and eventually that expert intuition wherever it's applied, because it's focused on upgrading the learner's cognitive machinery.
So let's try to wrap up this incredibly detailed deep dive. The core idea seems to be that this system isn't just teaching you things. It's fundamentally engineering understanding. It moves the user away from just accumulating bits of knowledge.
Which is fragile and often useless.
And towards mastering the actual machinery of knowledge acquisition itself. The focus shifts entirely from just adding more books to the shelf to structurally rebuilding the bookshelf to be stronger, bigger, and better organized.
Well put. It's the difference between just collecting recipes versus fundamentally internalizing the principles of chemistry, physics, and flavor combination that allow you to cook anything, invent new dishes, and troubleshoot when things go wrong.
Yeah.
The true measure of success isn't just knowing more facts by the end. It's the fundamental structural revision of your cognitive system that makes every future learning endeavor faster, deeper, and more effective. That's the real prize.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on after this. If you truly, genuinely believed that the time and the effort required for you to become properly expert in any new field you chose, finance, coding, history, neuroscience, anything would significantly decrease with every subsequent field you decided to tackle.
Because you had mastered the process of mastery itself.
What single subject or skill, maybe something that always felt too big, too daunting, too complex before, would you choose to master first, knowing that mastering it would make the next mountain easier to climb?
The real success, the sources suggest, isn't measured by the first summit you reach, but by the fundamental upgrade to your climbing gear that makes all future climbs faster and more achievable. That structural revision of your cognitive system is the ultimate advantage.